By late 1944, Allied troops had gained a strong foothold in Western Europe on their path to defeating Nazi Germany once and for all. In a vain, last-ditched effort to halt the Allied advance and push the invading troops back towards their beachheads at Normandy, Hitler and his top generals planned one mass land attack that would later become known as the Battle of the Bulge. Masses of German tanks, soldiers, and fighting vehicles were to push through a weak point in the Allied line in the Ardennes on their way to the French coast. Accompanying the ground forces were to be masses of German aircraft. Known as Operation Bodenplatte, the German Air Force intended to strike Allied targets across Western Europe to soften up Allied defenses and gain air superiority over the German land invasion. However, despite German ground forces beginning their attack on December 16th, poor weather and the lack of available aircraft meant that the vast majority of German air assets in the Western Front were grounded for the majority of the early stages of the counterattack. This allowed the Allied forces to operate with near impunity, wreaking havoc on German columns and heavily disrupting the German counterattack. However, as the end of 1944 approached, the weather cleared and Operation Bodenplatte was allowed to begin. The combined assault, collectively known as Operation Northwing, was planned to begin on New Year's morning, 1945. By the end of 1944, the Allies had built a series of airfields close to the front lines to provide direct air support to Allied troops without spending extra time and fuel flying back and forth between England and the mainland. Operation Bodenplatte called upon the German Air Force to attack 17 of these forward air bases, destroying the Allied aircraft while they were still on the ground, and allowing the Luftwaffe to provide close air support to the German advance. The operation began on New Year's morning with over 850 German aircraft setting out to attack the Allied air bases. Using night fighters and fighter bombers to find their way to the Allied airfields, the German pilots intended to attack the Allied bases while their opponents were still stuck on the ground, hungover from the New Year's partying the night before. However, the German assault got off to a particularly inauspicious start. Because of the secrecy necessary for such an operation to succeed, German anti-aircraft batteries were not informed that the low-flying aircraft formations were friendly. Because the Allies had air dominance over most of the Western Front, many German anti-aircraft batteries assumed the masses of low-flying aircraft were American. As a result, many of the German anti-aircraft guns fired upon their own planes. This problem was compounded when the German pilots flew over heavily defended V-2 launch sites near the front lines. As a result, nearly a quarter of the attacking German aircraft were downed by friendly fire before ever getting to fire their weapons. However, knowing the importance of their mission, the German pilots split up and continued towards their objectives. The airbase known as Y-29 was an American forward operations base located near the town of Asch in Belgium. Carved out in late 1944, the base was home to several fighter groups of P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs. On New Year's morning, 8 Thunderbolts of the 366th Fighter Group were scheduled to take off and fly a ground attack mission, supporting Allied troops in driving back German aggressors in the Ardennes forest. Idling at the runway's end were 12 P-51 Mustangs of the 487th Fighter Group. The P-51s were scheduled to participate in an early escort mission later that day. Still, their leader, Commander J.C. Meyer, had a bad feeling that the Germans might plan an attack that morning. Despite multiple refusals by his commanding officers to fly a patrol around the base, Myers told his air group to idle at the end of the runway in preparation for an aerial attack. As the P-47s took off to begin their ground support mission, they observed flak above a nearby British airbase. Upon flying closer, they observed a group of 65 German aircraft led by respected German ace Gunther Specht flying directly at them. With only seconds to react, the American airmen jettisoned their bombs and drop tanks and turned directly into the German assault. Chaos immediately erupted as the 8 Americans charged directly into the formation of 65 German aircraft, guns blazing. P-47 pilot Jack Kennedy was hit almost immediately, setting his left wing on fire and causing him to attempt to bail out of his aircraft. After noticing that the Germans that had attacked him were closing in on his tail, he reclosed his canopy and began taking evasive maneuvers to avoid their incoming fire. Meanwhile, on the ground, J.C. Meyer and his pilots finally saw the incoming German assault and gunned their engines to reach takeoff speed before the German pilots could begin strafing them. Meyer's wheels had barely lifted off the ground when the first German pilot came in for a head-on pass at the group. With his wheels still down and his fellow airmen on the runway, Meyer yanked back on the stick, pointed his nose directly at the German aircraft, and opened fire, sending the flaming German plane crashing straight into the runway. The P-51s immediately split up once they were in the air, selecting targets of opportunity and quickly engaging the German aircraft. Taking advantage of known weaknesses in German airplane design, such as decreased right-hand turning capabilities, the Americans pressed the attack, quickly downing several Nazi planes before they could attack the American base. Meanwhile, Jack Kennedy, whose P-47 still streamed a 20-foot wall of flame, had gotten behind the two German fighters initially set upon him. In combination with one of the P-51s, he was able to shoot down one of the German airplanes, driving the other one away and allowing him to escape into a nearby fog bank. The German air groups finally began to splinter as the American aircraft continued to push their counterattack. Bad luck started to plague the American airmen as overzealous American anti-aircraft gunners fired at anything that flew by, damaging several American aircraft and causing one pilot, Dean Huston, to return to base after his plane suffered severe damage. Despite this, and being outnumbered by more than 3-1, the American units continued to push their attack. At some point during the battle, one of the American pilots managed to down Gunther Specht, the mission's leader, who had accumulated an impressive 34 confirmed aerial victories. Pilots Sandy Motes and Alden Rigby recorded 4 aerial kills during the engagement, nearly becoming aces in a day. J.C. Meyer also recorded 2 kills, as did several other Allied airmen. By the time the last German airplane flew off into the rising sun, 24 of the 65 attacking German planes had been downed. Because of the low-flying nature of the engagement, only 4 of the downed German pilots survived. Amongst the dead were famed German aces Gunther Specht and Hauptmann Horst Gunther von Fassung, who, depending on the source, had previously been credited with an incredible 63 to 136 aerial victories. Y-29 sustained minimal damage throughout the battle, losing 1 P-47 during the engagement and suffering slight damage to the runway. Because of their courage and gallantry shown in the face of overwhelming odds, the 487th Fighter Group was awarded the Distinguished Unit Citation. They were the only fighter group on the Western Front to earn that honor. Over the next few months, J.C. Meyer would score 24 confirmed kills before he was grounded due to injuries sustained during an automobile accident later that year. Despite having more success during attacks on some of the other Allied airfields, Operation Bodenplatte as a whole had been a resounding failure for the Germans. While the Allies lost roughly 305 aircraft destroyed and 190 damaged, only 15 aircraft were destroyed in the air, with most of the 15 downed pilots surviving to fight another day. In most cases, the damaged and destroyed aircraft were replaced within days due to the incredible Allied wartime production. The Luftwaffe, on the other hand, suffered a colossal 143 pilots killed, with another 70 listed as missing and 21 badly wounded. This represented the Luftwaffe's most significant single-day loss of life throughout the war. Even more importantly, those killed, wounded, or missing were amongst the most experienced and capable pilots that the German Air Force had to offer. This, combined with a lack of available fuel, aircraft, and space for training new pilots, meant that the Luftwaffe was crippled with a lack of capable fighter pilots for the remainder of the war. The effects of the battles on the Allied air forces were best encapsulated in the experience of downed German pilot Stefan Kohl, who, after being captured and led to one of the damaged air bases, pointed to a line of destroyed American aircraft and remarked to one of his captors, Lieutenant Major George Brooking, "What do you think of that?" 3 days later, as he passed the same spot on the American airfield, he couldn't help but notice that all of the ruined aircraft had been replaced with fresh, gleaming new P-51s. Lieutenant Major Brooking pointed to the new aircraft and asked Kohl, "What do you think of that?" Kohl replied, "That is what is losing us the war." I hope you enjoyed learning about this incredible World War II story of heroism. If you would like to see more similar content, please consider subscribing to my channel and dropping a like on this video. Thanks for watching this episode from Topix of History.